Welcome to the M&A Unplugged podcast. Our mission is to help you be better prepared for your business acquisition or sale. Being prepared will ensure you maximize returns and minimize risks. This is M&A Unplugged with your host, Domenic Rinaldi.
Hey, M&A Unplugged community. This is your host, Domenic Rinaldi. Mindset and emotion play such a critical role in M&A transactions, but it's not talked about nearly enough. And this can be a costly oversight if you enter into a transaction, spend lots of money on advisors, only to realize you really weren't ready to close on a deal. I had the pleasure of talking with Jason Abell of the Rewire Group. Jason specializes in mindset coaching. Rewire's brand of mindset coaching centers on the belief that people don't need more information to succeed, but instead can achieve or exceed their outcomes with a better way of thinking. If you don't think mindset or emotion are an important part of M&A, talk with someone who's had the other party walk away from a deal at the closing table. I hope this gets you thinking about your mindset for a deal and how to be better prepared. Before we get into the interview, please head over to K2 Advisor and take our free seller or buyer assessment. These assessments will help you understand how ready you really are for an acquisition or sale. And being prepared is critical to ensuring that you maximize revenues and minimize risks. Thank you for being here. Hey, Jason, welcome to M&A Unplugged.
Happy to be here, Domenic. Thank you.
Hey, so for the M&A Unplugged community, could you give them a quick backgrounder?
Sure. You want like the 1 minute version or the 3 hour version?
I think we better stick with 1 minute. We'll come back for the 3 hour one.
Yeah, no, it'll end up maybe being longer than a minute. But I mean, background is I have a mortgage banking background of 21 years in corporate America, at least professionally. This is me. And then about 7 years ago, I was being coached myself when I was a leader in mortgage banking, and I realized the benefits of being coached both personally and professionally. And the person that was coaching me, a guy by the name of Steve Scanlon, he and I partnered up and started Rewire, which is a coaching and development company, really focused in on mindset coaching, which hopefully we'll get into. And again, we did that, 6-7 years ago. And now we coach executives and leaders and founders around the country. So professionally, that's me. More importantly, I'm a husband to an amazing wife. I get to be the father of 2 teenage children, which they keep me hopping. And I can tell you all kinds of personal stuff. But that professionally and really the important personal things, there you go.
So mindset really interested me when we first started talking, because in M&A, you have owners of businesses where, the fundamentals are the fundamentals, but mindset about the transaction becomes so important. And then on the other side, you have buyers when they're coming into a transaction, their mindset, not only in getting the transaction done, but their mindset during transition and taking over the new company and how they're approaching employees becomes so critical. And so I'm hoping that we'll bring mindset into the M&A world and help owners and buyers figure out how mindset can help them improve their odds of getting a successful transaction done. But let's first start with the basics. What is mindset?
Sure.
What is mindset coaching?
Well, I think mindset is everything. In your question there, you said, helping your buyers and your sellers of companies, with their mindset and using that to their advantage so that they can maybe have better outcomes than they would have had otherwise. I will tell you, Domenic, that mindset does play a role in every transaction that you do with the buyers and the sellers. And sometimes it works to their benefit and sometimes it works to their detriment. But you can be sure that it's playing a role in not only how the actual transaction goes and then the forthcoming transition, but also just the success of it from that point forward. Because you know your business way better than I do, but sellers typically, when you go through the transaction, they're probably not done as of that date, right? There's still some sort of transitionary period and all of that. And boy, I will tell you, mindset is everything. And it can be a detriment or a benefit. Our role with people that are going through transitions of life, either personally and more oftentimes than not professionally, mindset is the make or break type of deal. So yeah, it's in a nutshell, I think it's everything.
Why is that? Why is mindset make or break? To help us better understand the elements of mindset and how that could be make or break.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a couple of stories. So I'll give you a story about a recent client, and I just thought of this as you were asking the question. So I've got a client that he's tops in his field in the state of Oklahoma. I mean, he's already there. He's the top. And his mindset is pretty good. He's got a full morning routine that includes, working out, health and wellness is in really good shape. He meditates and prays in the morning. Like, he sets himself, he's a very positive attitude, forward thinking, type of person. But there was one element of his business where he was just in his head about. Sometimes we call it the monkey mind. Like, it was overwhelming to him. He didn't quite understand. He wanted to take his business to the next level using this one particular CRM and marketing technique, kind of like some of the stuff that you and I were talking about before we hit record. And, I said to him, man, why aren't we doing this yet? And he gave me, man, Domenic, 15 excuses of why it wasn't happening. And the bottom line of all of it, this is a smart guy, intelligent, a lot of experience, tops in his field, well regarded. But there was a mental block with him where this just wasn't happening. And so what we did at that point is I can't force somebody to have a good mindset around something or a bad mindset around something. But what I can do is I can facilitate their mindset. I can ask questions that may unlock a code in their brain where they're looking at something from a different angle, thinking about something in a little bit different way that maybe they weren't thinking about before, because I'm an unbiased third party and I'm not in the matrix with them. I'm not in their monkey mind. So I get to see things from a different viewpoint and therefore ask questions that they may have not thought of before. So we were going through that process with him, and I used something that we call the iceberg model, and there's iceberg models for all kinds of different business applications. But for this particular iceberg model, if you think of the very tip of the iceberg as the results that someone's looking for, right below that, before the waterline, but below that are the actions that we all need to take to get the results that we're looking for. And then below the waterline is the rest of the big old iceberg. Like, that's the bulk of the iceberg, right? Those are thoughts and emotions and feelings. Well, our thoughts and emotions and feelings have way more to do with the actions that we take to the ultimate results that it is that we're looking for. So for me to just come in to this particular client and say, hey man, if you just do this, this, and this, you'll get the results that you're looking for. And he and I can have an agree fest forever, but that wasn't the problem. The problem wasn't, oh, you just need to do this to get those results. The problem was he was overwhelmed. He was a little afraid of the technology. He didn't think that he had time. You hear me? Like he was in his head about it. So we asked a lot of questions, and I was just in his corner kind of facilitating his thought process, where he was able to look at that activity and that project in a different way, in a way that he just hadn't looked at it before. And he was creating his own insights. He was changing his own mindset, where we were able to unlock a few things, take some baby steps to then lead to bigger steps, to walking, to jogging, to really running. And now this is now an older, I just coached with this person this morning, so it's fresh in my head, but this example is a little older, where he completed that particular project, got to the next level that he wanted to get with this particular phase of his business. And it's all because of the mindset. And so, you asked a specific question. I gave you a story to illustrate the answer, but we've got examples of that time and time and time again.
So let me ask you, when somebody's selling a business or somebody's coming in to buy a business, these are major life events, like major, right?
Right on.
Owner is maybe letting go of their baby. The money is going to be for retirement. Buyers coming in, risking their fortune. They don't know what the future holds. Major life event. What happens to mindset, and what role does mindset play when people are going through major transitions in their life?
There's a saying that my wife is a health coach, and so we talk and I'm a mindset coach, so we talk about coaching all the time, right? You can imagine the dinner talk and the pillow talk, right? And she has this saying that she brought to me years ago, saying, when emotions are high, logic is low. Uh-huh. And you think about, and you see this all the time with your clients, I'm sure, even the way that you just asked the question, boy, it's an emotionally charged transaction, life event. I don't know this factually, but I'd be willing to guess that, sellers, sometimes they're good circumstances where a person is at the pinnacle of their career and their business and they want to leave really well and it's good. But oftentimes it's probably not. There's a health issue or there's a death or there's a estate plan or, something like that where emotions, they're going to be involved, whether they're good or bad, emotions are going to be involved. And so, and even for your buyers, it's the same thing. You just said their life savings, it's a new business they may not fully understand or whatever the case may be. That inherently is an emotional decision. There's going to be emotions involved in that. It's not just a math problem that needs to be solved factually by robots, right? You don't have robots buying and selling businesses. We have people that are buying and selling businesses. And with those people comes life circumstances, life events, emotions, community, other people that are involved. And so the mindset, again, it is involved with it. So what we do, and we've helped people through transitions like what you do with people with buying and selling businesses. And we'll come in and we'll get a baseline of exactly where they are right now. So we'll do a little bit of a measurement on that emotional scale, right? Because if the emotions are too high, then the logic goes way, way down. That's not going to end up proving for a good outcome for them. So we'll get a baseline measurement of where is their mindset? How are they feeling about this? If you think of my previous story, what does the below the waterline look like on that particular iceberg? And once we get a baseline there, now we can help that person create awareness for where they are, because more often than not, they're not even aware that they're going psycho over this transaction or that they're overly exuberantly positively thinking about it, or that they're just depressed in this. Oftentimes they don't even have an awareness around this. So we want to create that awareness to begin with. Then we say, okay, this is where you are. Where is it that you ideally would like to be? And so we define the desired end result. Well, here's where you are now. You're saying through our facilitation that you want to be here. Now let's figure out a way to start closing a gap. And that would be some of those baby steps that I gave in the illustration that I gave you with our Oklahoma client. We start taking many steps. We're not trying to solve the world all in one coaching session, because we can't. Coaching is an aggregate type of activity where we're stacking on top of one another. But I guess I would wrap this question up by saying mindset does play a role, and there's very specific things that you can do to affect the mindset that then affects the outcome that they're looking for.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we will see some percentage of the time that an owner of a business or a buyer will launch into either selling or buying a business, and it seems like they're motivated. It seems like they have the right intentions. Everything seems to have lined up, and they get halfway through or even sometimes all the way to the end, and all of a sudden they get cold feet and they pull out of the transaction. And invariably, I'm thinking, well, look, there was something way back at the beginning that could have indicated they weren't really ready for this step, but either they weren't being honest with themselves or they weren't in tune enough to their feelings to understand, how they really felt about this. Were they willing to, if you're a buyer, take on the risk, or if you're a seller, really let go of your baby? And so that struggle is real. It happens because we've had deals fall apart. And I think the audience could really, are there 2 or 3 things that you could give to the audience to say, look, before you head into a transaction, whether you're selling or you're buying, ask yourself these questions, like to really gauge, are you really ready for this big moment or not?
Yeah, no, it's great. It is a great question. And I think, we've worked with executive placement companies where they won't engage a client unless they're going through mindset coaching. It's just part of the package because of exactly what you're saying, right? In those examples, they go through the interview process, they get all the way to where an offer's on the table, everybody's feeling good about it, and the person walks away for whatever reason. Well, if they were either being mentored or coached, or they had somebody that they could bounce ideas off of ahead of time, maybe that wouldn't happen at the very end. Because at that point, when you get to that point, whether it's your closing table or what I'm talking about with executives, those closings should just be formalities at that point. Like it's done, we're feeling good, but that whole cold feet thing, that is the mindset, that is the emotion, that's the under the waterline iceberg, right? Because if all of that was in alignment, then the closing there wouldn't be a cold feet, type of thing. But you're telling me that happens.
Are there a couple of questions that people can ask themselves so they know to pick up the phone and call someone like you, say, hey, I'm not certain I'm ready for it. I want this on one level. I'm not certain I'm ready for it. Can you help me think through it?
Yeah, I mean, the couple of questions, for, say, self-coaching, if you will, just initially is, as you're going in to the transaction, whether for you with your business, if you're a buyer or a seller, there is this idea, and we've all heard it, of begin with the end in mind. And so even the way that I just described, we help identify somebody where they are today from a mindset standpoint. And then at the end of the day, what exactly is it that they're looking to achieve? So if they were asking themselves this question, it might be something like, okay, in an ideal world, at the day that this transaction closes, what do I want that to look like for me? And really detail out the answers to that. Not like, oh, I want to make a bunch of money, or, oh, I want to be able to say that I own this business, or I want to be able to say that I sold my business for this much money. Not that. I want a detailed list for yourself in answering that question. What is it that I'm looking for financially? What is it that I'm looking for emotionally? What is it? What are the conversations that I want to have with my spouse or my significant other or my group of friends? What's the conversation that I want to have with them about this transaction? Yeah. And that one I end up using a lot is, at the end of the day, what is it that you want to be able to tell the people that are closest to you about how this went down? If it went down perfectly, what would that look like? And I want a handwritten out, detailed description of that. And again, not me as the coach. I don't care if they give that to me or not. I want them to, your clients, I want them to be able to answer that question to themselves in writing. Yeah. Now, if I've begun with the end in mind and I've got a detailed description, man, I know what that day looks like. I know what it smells like. I know what the financials are going to look like. I know the emotions that I'm going to feel. I know when I go out to dinner that night, what I'm going to be able to tell my significant other about how that went down. If I've got that written out, now it's just, okay, now I've got like a GPS. I know the destination. Well, now let's just draw out the journey on the way to get there.
Yeah. This is such a great point and a great answer because one of the first questions that we'll ask an owner when they walk into our office is, what are your plans for after the sale? And the owners who can detail for us what they're going to do, like I've got a ranch in Colorado, or I've got a beach house or whatever, and I've got 5 grandkids and I can't wait for them to come. Like, they have clearly thought about life after the business. The folks who come into the office and say, well, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I always worry about those folks because it tells me they haven't really thought through what life is going to be like after they sell the business. And I'm going to add to that. I was at a conference about 1.5 years ago, and there was a straw poll from people who had sold their business. And the question was, did you feel remorseful or not about selling your business? Over 75% of the respondents said they were remorseful. It had nothing to do with how much money they got paid for the business. And it had everything to do with what life was like after they sold the business. They didn't have the next thing to go do.
Yeah.
And so when you think about that, that ties your answer right into that. If you don't know what life looks like at the closing table and what happens next, and you might be headed for some real trouble.
Well, sure. Not only will they, go into that 75% bucket that you just talked about, but I would submit to you that those are the people more apt to have cold feet right at the table, right? All the work's been done on your end, on their end, on the sellers, the buyer's end. And if you don't know what the next step is for you, you do what you do and you've got plenty of experience. I would say I wouldn't even take that client on at that point. Let's get you some help and let's figure that out. You're going to end up having a better life afterwards if you think about it today. And this transaction that you're entering into, it's just going to be a more pleasurable, positive experience transaction if you know the end game and what you want life to look like afterwards.
And Jason, you're exactly right, which is, we've had our M&A practice for 20 years, but we just recently started K2 Advisor. And K2 Advisor is all about helping people prepare. And one of the first legs on the stool is, where are you emotionally about this? And right. If they can't get their heads wrapped around that, they've got to do work there. And we help them think that through before we go on to what your business look like, your personal financials, so critical. And on the other side are buyers. We've had buyers get into deals where they take over the business and they didn't realize some things about business ownership. They didn't fully understand, and because they hadn't thought through how it was going to change their life.
Yep.
They had seen the numbers on the paper. They know the type of company it is, but they hadn't thought through, well, now I'm the owner of a business. The buck stops with you. And if the buck hasn't stopped with you before, you really need to think through that, because there is nobody else to go call. There's not a lifeline. You are the lifeline.
It's so true. I just helped a really good friends of mine. They started a farm brewery here in Olney, Maryland, and they did just a phenomenal job with it. And fortunately, it was able to just open up, and they're off to the races. They're completely crushing it. My role in the business is really their ad hoc mindset coaches. Like we're talking about, their numbers are phenomenal. They're from a purely business standpoint, they're off the charts. I'm asking them almost on a daily basis, how you doing? How you feeling? Mm-hmm. You taking care of yourself? Like we're talking through those types of things so that, they're having business success, but we don't want it to be to the detriment of them personally, because if it is, that will at some point down the road, if not sooner than later, affect the business. Yeah. And so we need to take care of that piece of it as well, the mindset.
Let me switch gears just a little bit. How does mindset impact company culture? How does the mindset of, an owner of a business impact the ultimate culture of a business?
Yeah, I love questions on culture, because it's that thing that we can't, like I'm holding this pen right now and it's tangible and I can describe it to you. Culture, I can't hold it up to you. You know in your organization what the vibe and the feel and the touch of the culture is, but it's not as tangible. And so I love talking about it because it's very similar to mindset, right? You opened up our discussion today. What is mindset? Describe it to me. And I can give you stories and I could give you the science if you wanted to geek out on that. But a positive mindset versus a negative mindset, there is just a vibe around that, right? And culture is exactly the same way. So the first thing that I would say is it really does start at the top, and it trickles down. So you've got a vibrant founder and leader that is positive and a go-getter and is servant leadership based and those types of things. The organization, more likely than not, that culture, if you will, that mindset is going to permeate, the organization. I've seen some really great people with good personalities and bringing good culture to the table go to work for organizations where the leader is just not that, they're the opposite, and it doesn't work out. Very rarely do I see bottom up culture happening. I almost always see top down culture happening. So first of all, it just starts at the top. And what I just did a branding podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the branding expert, she had basically the same exact thing. She's like, the personal brand of the founder or the executive, the C-suite, or the person, I'll say in answering to you, the personal culture of the founder or the C-suite, it just permeates, the rest of the organization. So, and again, I would go back to, I don't want to be, everything goes back to mindset, but I do think a lot of culture does go back to mindset.
Yeah, so this is another really good point, because one of the things that we tell buyers oftentimes is you need to make sure that the business you're buying doesn't just fit from a financial and strategic perspective, but it also has to fit culturally. If you try to put two companies together, or if you're, an investor group and you're coming into a business and it doesn't have the right culture, it's going to be a nightmare to get through that. To change culture means you probably have to swap out people. And one of the big reasons you buy a business is for the people, their knowledge and their experience and their relationships with your client base. And so if you're saying that mindset starts at the top, then as a buyer, you really have to take your clues and figure out, who is the person you're buying this business from, because that will tell you a lot about the culture of the business and whether or not that's a good fit for you. Not to say you shouldn't do more investigation and due diligence around culture, but it should probably start there.
Well, I think it goes along with something that you said earlier, is sometimes you'll look on paper and you go, oh man, the financials are great of this organization. That's the quantitative research and things that you can do. So it might, we want to be in this business and the numbers look great. That's great. You cannot overlook the qualitative measurements, which is exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. What is the culture like? What is the the person that you're buying from, or the group of people that you're buying from? Are these people that are in alignment with the way that you're currently running your company, or the way that you would like to run a company? Because if it's not, if the quantitative research works and all checks out, but the qualitative doesn't, I'm sorry to say, it ain't going to work. Yeah. It just won't work. Yeah. And by the way, the opposite is true. So I'll talk against I'll talk the other side of the coin of my mindset approach. If you are in alignment with someone from a qualitative standpoint, so your buyers and your sellers that you're dealing with, but the quantitative piece isn't working, I see so often, it'll work out because he's a great guy, or she's a great person, or it'll be fine. They're passionate about what we do. Yeah. If the quantitative part isn't there, you shouldn't do the deal either. It has to be both of them together.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I've just
we
seen
see
too many
buyers.
mistakes there.
We see buyers being more guilty of that than sellers, where they get so enamored with the business and whether it's a sexy bit, whatever, and they lose a sight of the fundamentals, and they let their emotions take over. And I tell you, some people listening to this podcast know that I cover a lot of fundamentals, right? Valuations and how to do a deal and the technical aspects of it. But this stuff is so critical to a transaction mindset and emotion. In fact, a buddy of mine and a previous guest, Jay Myers, is just about to launch a new book, and he asked me to provide a quote for it. He had sold his business. It was his baby a couple of years ago, and he came on and he talked about it, and we've become friends ever since. And he sent me an early draft of the book, and I read it. And the book was about all the emotional stuff that he went through.
That's right.
And in my quote, I even said, I'm so glad you did this book, because emotions are not talked enough about in transactions. It's oftentimes the technicalities, the fundamentals, the economics. But whether you're a buyer or seller, you have to be in tune with, is this transaction really going to be the outcome that you need it to be emotionally? And the financial stuff is one thing, but if both equations are not there, like you said, it's not going to work out.
Yeah. Well, and we're getting back to where we started, right? With the beginning with the end in mind, not just the financial piece, but also the qualitative piece, the culture piece that you're referring to, the mindset. All of that is
Good
so
stuff.
important. Yeah.
Good stuff. I love it. Jason, any parting comments or thoughts that you can leave the M&A Unplugged community? And then I'll ask you to leave your contact information in case folks want to reach out to you.
Yeah, thank you. I love the work that you're doing. As a business owner myself, I and with all the clients that we have that own their businesses, I know that in the back of every business owner's mind is this topic. But we just don't think about it on the forefront of our mind often enough. And so I just appreciate the work that you're doing, not only in when somebody's ready to do the transaction, you're there to help them with that, but with your new venture, you're going upstream to help business owners like me think about it, ahead of time. And then you're doing the podcast to just give little morsels of education along the way. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's important work that you're doing. And I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm glad that, you're not just having accountants and CPAs on, you're having people like me on, because you're covering the full spectrum of, what this transaction entails.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing these thoughts and all of your experience and knowledge, which I know is extensive. I didn't know that your wife was also a coach, so you're bringing a lot to the table here.
Yeah, that's the only reason I eat more salads than I used to. Is she's a health coach, so she keeps me in line. Left to my own devices, it wouldn't work out very good.
So, Jason, if folks wanted to get in touch with you, how could they reach you?
Yeah, thanks. Our website is rewireinc.com, rewireinc.com. I'm on all the socials as Rewire Jason. And we have all kinds of free tools on our website. I mean, people can go to our website, take the free stuff, and boy, I'd just be tickled to death. We love helping people in a positive way. And of course, if anybody wants to be clients, that's great too. But rewireinc.com.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dominic. Appreciate the time, brother.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed this episode. All of today's information will be available in the show notes. If you enjoy our content, please remember to subscribe and review our podcast. I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the M&A Unplugged podcast. And until then, please remember that scaling, acquiring, or selling a business takes time, preparation, and the proper knowledge.